Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the Modern Warfare 2v2 Alpha. The Alpha was set to begin tomorrow afternoon, but Infinity Ward decided to bring up the servers one day early, which means that any and all PlayStation 4 fans are able to jump into the Modern Warfare 2v2 gunfight game mode, where they can experience the maps and the guns and the movement, and just in general, get a feel for the Modern Warfare multiplayer and what it's going to feel like. Now once again, just to be clear, the Alpha is available to anybody on the PlayStation 4. There is no pre-order required, PlayStation Plus isn't even required, you just go to the store, search Modern Warfare, and from there you can download the Alpha and play it all weekend. The Alpha test is set to end sometime before Monday, August 26th, so be sure to get in as much time as you can while you can. This test is also only available to PlayStation 4 fans, as it looks like this is going to be part of the deal that Sony has with Activision, and with Modern Warfare being said to have crossplay at launch, this alpha test is likely Activision's way of sweetening the deal for Sony, who are no doubt wanting to get as much exclusive content for their platform as they can, given all the extra money that they're paying Activision that Microsoft is simply not. With the introduction now out of the way, I want to give you guys my honest first impressions of the Modern Warfare multiplayer, and as you guys know, I've been somebody who's been following the development and the news surrounding this game very closely, but I'm also somebody who does not have a relationship with Activision, and in fact I go out of my way to avoid a relationship with Activision, so up until this point I have not played the game. Like most of you guys, I've just been following the game very closely, I've been watching videos from other content creators, and I've been reserving my judgment for the game until I was able to experience it for myself. Now that being said, I am not judging the totality of the Modern Warfare multiplayer based on what we see here in this alpha test, right? That would be silly. It would be completely unfair given the nature of what is currently available to us, because right now we can only play the 2v2 gunfight game mode, which gives us random weapons every 2 rounds with random attachments, and currently we can only play on 3 maps, and those maps are specifically designed for this 2v2 game mode, so it's not a full representation of what the Modern Warfare multiplayer is going to be like, but it does represent what the Modern Warfare multiplayer is going to feel like. Going into this alpha test, my main focus was to try to judge how the weapons feel, how the time to kill feels, how the movement feels, and basically just try to adapt to the new gameplay changes that Infinity Ward is introducing with this year's game. I'm also going to be separately judging the 2v2 gunfight game mode, but again, I will not be drawing full conclusions for the Modern Warfare multiplayer just based on this one game mode, because that would be completely unfair. Let's go ahead and kick things off here today by talking about the core tenets of the Modern Warfare multiplayer. From watching trailers and all the early gameplay that has been released so far, one of the biggest criticisms I've seen coming from fans is that the game appears to have a much more Battlefield style of approach to it when it comes to movement and gunplay, and I honestly think that criticism is accurate. Everything from the movement to the recoil patterns to the mantling and the weapon handling definitely gives me a feeling that I'm not quite used to. It's not completely foreign to me, but as someone who's been playing every Call of Duty since 2007, this definitely feels a lot different than what we've been seeing over the course of the past couple of years. Infinity Ward has said that their goal with Modern Warfare is for it to be a much more grounded, a more down-to-earth, and a somewhat realistic take on the Call of Duty formula, and I definitely think they accomplished that with what I've been able to experience so far. Now, don't get me wrong, the game still feels like Call of Duty. I'm not here to say that the game just feels like Battlefield or anything like that. There's no getting around it. It still has that classic Call of Duty feel to it, but the key word I want you guys to focus on there is the classic Call of Duty feel to it. After playing games like Black Ops 3 and more recently Black Ops 4, or even games like Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare 2, the pacing that we see here in Modern Warfare 2019 is a bit slower than what we're accustomed to. If I had to make a comparison just to compare this game to another Call of Duty Duty title, I would say that the movement and just the general feel that I have while playing Modern Warfare feels a lot more like Call of Duty World at War or even the original Black Ops than it does games like Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 3. Again, just solely from a movement and a handling perspective. When you first boot up the game and you play your first few matches, it's going to take some time to adjust to the new movement and the new gameplay changes, but after a few games, you'll settle right in and the game will start to feel a lot better. One interesting change is the addition of the double sprint mechanic. So if you double tap your left stick to sprint, you'll begin to move much faster than normal for a short period of time. This goes back to that idea of Modern Warfare being a more tactical shooter than a lot of the previous Call of Duty titles, whereas in games like Black Ops 4, we're constantly sprinting around the map, it's silky smooth, there's unlimited sprint. It's a lot different here in this game. You can move very quickly for a short period of time, but then you kind of slow down, so players are going to have to learn when to sprint quickly versus when to sprint normally, and that's definitely a big part of this 2v2 gunfight game mode. I'm super interested to see how this is going to feel in traditional game modes when the Modern Warfare beta releases. It's one thing to sprint quickly to get to a power position on a map that's essentially the size of Rust, but it's another thing to introduce these new gameplay mechanics to traditional Call of Duty sized maps where there are 6 players on each team, where there are objectives to take and there's instant respawns and a whole lot more going on. Again, it's not fair to judge the totality of the Modern Warfare multiplayer just based on this 2v2 game mode, but the sprint feature in this game is a lot different than what we've seen in the previous Call of Duty titles, and it's going to have a pretty significant impact on the feel and the pacing of the Modern Warfare multiplayer as a whole. Now moving on to the weapons, I am incredibly happy with how the Modern Warfare guns are looking, sounding, and performing so far. One of my favorite aspects of the game is just how good the audio quality is. Everything from the weapon firing sounds, to the reload sounds, and even to the sounds of enemy footsteps and the ambient noise that we have on the maps, everything is absolutely incredible. I've always felt like Infinity Ward has had really good sound quality in their games, but I feel like what we have here in Modern Warfare is truly something special, and that is definitely needed given the fact that in the game's multiplayer, not only here in the 2v2 gunfight mode, we have no minimap whatsoever, so footstep quality and footstep sounds are going to be a much bigger deal in this game as compared to the previous titles. Now going back to the weapons for a second, I feel as though the weapons themselves are all incredibly unique. In the gunfight game mode, you have a different random class loadout every 2 rounds, and because of this, we are able to try out a ton of different weapons with a bunch of different attachments, and it has been a lot of fun to try out all these different guns and get a feel for how they perform. I'm a bit biased because I've loved these weapons from the previous Modern Warfare games, but so far my favorite guns are the MP5 and the MP7, and I love how much disparity there is between the handling on, say, a submachine gun versus a light machine gun, or an assault rifle versus a marksman rifle. They all feel much different, and that's partly due to the fact that these classes are randomly generated. I also really like how the weapons seem to have a decent amount of recoil, especially when you're firing full auto downrange. When I first went into this game, I thought it's probably going to be like Modern Warfare 2, where I could just pull down the trigger and just melt somebody from across the map, but these guns do in fact have recoil, and you have to master that recoil on each given weapon, and the weapons are always different because they're constantly swapping out the attachments, which makes every round of gunfight that much more interesting. I also really like the fact that on virtually every gun, we have the ability to choose between fire modes. It's basically like the select fire attachment that we had back in Black Ops 2, except now it's built into virtually every gun in the game, which just adds one more layer to the Modern Warfare multiplayer. The variety in attachments is also something I'm a huge fan of. Now, like I said, obviously in the 2v2 mode, our loadouts are completely randomized, but when the full game comes out, or even before that during the beta, we're going to be able to put together our classes ourselves, and there are going to be way more attachments in this game than we've ever seen before, and each of those attachments is going to have pros and cons associated with them, and here in the 2v2 alpha, we're getting a small taste of what that is going to be like. I would say that so far, I feel like the weapons weapons are the best part of the Gunfight Alpha. Every game you get to experience about half a dozen different weapons, and sure, sometimes you end up using the same ones for a few games in a row, but being able to try out so many different weapon and attachment combinations has been a lot of fun for me personally, and even though we're playing on the same 3 maps in what is essentially just a party mode, that desire to try out more and more guns with different kinds of attachments is what is going to keep me playing this alpha throughout the entire weekend. Now, speaking of gunfights, let's go ahead and circle back to that and talk about that for a moment. I mentioned earlier that it's not fair to judge the entire game based on this one mode, but it is fair, however, to judge this mode based on what's been made available to us, right? For me personally, and I just mentioned this a minute ago, Gunfight feels like a glorified party mode. Now, that's not to say that that is necessarily a bad thing. I feel like more modes and more options for players is typically a good thing for any game franchise, but for me personally, I find this game mode to actually be somewhat boring. I kind of look at it the same way I look at other game modes in Call of Duty's history that I was never really a big fan of. For me personally, and you guys see this in my videos, I love to play Kill Confirmed and Team Deathmatch, and to a lesser extent, Domination and Search and Destroy, but I don't like to play a lot of other game modes, like for example, Heist. I feel as though Heist is a great example of a game mode that people enjoy, but it certainly does not represent the Black Ops 4 multiplayer in its entirety, right? It's a much different kind of game mode that lets people experience the game in a much different way, and that's pretty much what we have here with Gunfight. My concern with Gunfight is not that I personally don't have that much fun with it. It's actually super fun when people are moving around, but people tend to just hide in the back on either side of any single map that I play. My problem is actually that I'm worried about how many resources Infinity Ward is putting into supporting the Gunfight game mode. Right now, there are 3 Gunfight maps in the alpha, and 2 more are going to be added before the weekend is over, and I have to wonder just how many Gunfight maps are they planning to launch with the game. A big problem for Call of Duty World War II and Black Ops 4, as I'm sure you guys remember, is that each one of those games released with a pitiful amount of original multiplayer maps that could be utilized in traditional game modes, like once again, Team Deathmatch, Domination, Hardpoint, and Search and Destroy. I'm all for Gunfight being a staple feature in Modern Warfare because it's clear that a lot of people are really enjoying it, and though I have my issues with it, I still enjoy it as well, and no doubt people are going to really like it when it comes out in October, but I'm hoping that the Gunfight maps and support for the Gunfight game mode are the icing on the Modern Warfare multiplayer cake, rather than being a significant chunk of the cake itself. The maps are absolutely beautiful, and I love that Infinity Ward has been putting in a lot of time and effort into developing this game mode, but I'm hoping that they're also putting in the man-hours to make sure that the traditional multiplayer, the classic, iconic, what we all buy the game for multiplayer, I'm hoping that has as much launch day content as the older games did, right? Picture games like Modern Warfare 2 and the original Black Ops and Black Ops 2. Those games had a ton of launch day content when it came to the traditional multiplayer, and I feel as though that's a big reason why people fell in love with those games, right? So here with Modern Warfare 2019, I'm happy that Gunfight is going to be here. I'm happy that they're going to be supporting the Gunfight game mode, but they have to support the traditional multiplayer in addition to supporting lesser game modes like 2v2 or even the big team game modes like 20v20 and 32v32. Modern Warfare is going to have a ton of different game modes and a lot of different ways to play. You guys may remember seeing the realism mode as well as the nighttime modes where you're running around with night vision goggles. That's all well and good, but keep in mind the majority of people buy Call of Duty every year for the traditional standard multiplayer. Most people, like roughly 60% of the player base, only plays game modes like Team Deathmatch and Free-For-All, right? They have to make sure they're focusing the game for those players as well as expanding the multiplayer for people that want to play 32v32 or 2v2 or 10v10 or any of the other number of game modes that they plan to launch with the game. We've actually seen a pretty disturbing pattern in recent years, if you think about it, where developers were spread way too thin trying to support so many different modes at once, and the result is all of those modes ended up suffering, right? Well, like I said, said, with Modern Warfare, they are being very ambitious when it comes to the different game modes that are going to be available here, and I'm worried that they're going to be spread too thin once again. I suppose we are going to have to wait and see how things are going to play out, but so far people really seem to be enjoying Gunfight, and I'm happy that they're bringing back what is essentially Face-Off from Modern Warfare 3 once again, because there has been a huge demand for a game mode like this in the Call of Duty franchise for a very long time. Now, moving away from the gunfight mode for a second and the discussion about the weapons, let's go ahead and talk about some of the more nitty-gritty aspects of the Modern Warfare Alpha. Like I mentioned earlier, the maps are absolutely beautiful, as are the weapons and the weapon animations and the smoke that comes out of the weapons. Keep in mind, all this footage is coming from my stock PlayStation 4 that I got when the console first came out, and yet the game still looks incredible and it runs very smooth. This will only get better for those of you who play on a PlayStation 4 Pro or an Xbox One X or even a high-end gaming PC, and I definitely think that's a good sign for Modern Warfare going forward. Another aspect of the game that I really enjoy, and I can't believe I'm talking about this, is the options menu. You may think that's not a big deal, but it's actually a pretty freaking big deal. Take a look at all the customization choices that we have here. We have everything from 3 different kinds of aim assist to keyboard and controller support. We can choose to toggle or hold many different aspects of how our character interacts with weapons and equipment, and it's really encouraging to see such a robust options menu in an alpha for a game that isn't even set to come out for another couple of months. Now, what isn't encouraging, however, is the complete and total lack of a network system. As of right now, and keep in mind this is an early release alpha and things are definitely subject to change, but as of right now, we have absolutely no way of checking our connection or our ping while we're playing the game itself. You guys may know we have a similar problem in Black Ops 4 where by default on the scoreboard we cannot see our connection, and to see our connection we have to go through 3 or 4 option menus just to check it out, and hopefully when Modern Warfare comes out in October we will have ping numbers available right there in the scoreboard, because come on, man, it's 2019. Stop trying to hide important information like connection quality from the player base. It's an online first-person shooter game, and we have no idea what our connection is. Like, how did that possibly make it past testing? But with that being said, those are pretty much all of my first impressions of the Modern Warfare Gunfight Alpha. Again, these are just my first impressions of the game, and they are definitely subject to change, but for right now, I'm enjoying what I see, though, to be honest, there really isn't a whole lot to see. To answer the question of does the game suck, which is definitely what a lot of you guys probably clicked this video to find out, no, I don't think that the game sucks, but like I said, we're essentially looking at a party mode right now, and there are still so many questions that have yet to be answered. Right now, we are just getting a taste of what the game is going to be like. We're getting a feel for the movement and the weapon handling and the weapon performance, and that's all well and good, but for right now, that's all we actually have, right? That's all we're going to be able to test with this alpha, even after they add the 2 remaining maps that are going to be coming later on this weekend. Now, when the beta rolls around, that's when we're going to be able to play traditional game modes and make our own classes, and we're going to be able to use perks and choose our attachments and be able to run kill streaks, and from there, we're going to have a much more accurate read on how the Modern Warfare multiplayer is going to play out. I mean, right now, playing the 2v2 Gunfight Alpha, not having a minimap doesn't really bother me at all, because I can hear where the gunshots are coming from, and the maps are all essentially the size of Rust, but when the full game comes out, or even before that, when the full beta comes out, it may actually bother me not having that minimap when I'm trying to play game modes like Team Deathmatch and Domination on maps that are designed for 12 players. When it comes down to it, the 2v2 Gunfight Alpha is what it is. It's a way for fans to get used to the new engine and try out the new gameplay mechanics, but this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Modern Warfare multiplayer, and on that note, I'm going to end off today's video and pass the question on to you guys. What do you think of the Modern Warfare multiplayer after having finally played it? For those of you who are on Xbox and PC, I feel for you guys, I really do. I wish you could play this game right now, I really do, but unfortunately, that's the very nature of exclusivity deals here in the gaming industry. But even for you guys, based on what we've seen so far with the pre-release material and the live streams, and now seeing everyone's videos going up of the alpha, what do you think of the Modern Warfare multiplayer so far? I would love to get a discussion going down there in the comments, because I'm super interested to hear what everyone thinks about the game so far. So please share your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments. Thank you guys all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.
choppers, top marks.